Welcome back to the McCoy Leadership Podcast, elevating your impact through valuable insights and conversations about leadership. Welcome back. We're here today with Pete Mohr. We're here on the third episode of the McCoy Leadership Podcast, but we're super excited to have Pete with us today. Pete's been in business since 1994. And I read somewhere that that's 30 years ago, and I don't think that can be quite right because that would put me in my mid-40s, and I'm pretty sure I'm only like 25. But anyhow.
It goes.
It goes very fast. But Pete has been in business since 94. As I said, he has went from being an operator to being an owner, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Pete is also the host of the Business Owner Breakthrough podcast, and we'll link to that in the show notes so that you can find Pete and the great information that he has. But Pete knows more about him than I do, so I'm going to flip it over to Pete and let him give us an introduction and tell us a little bit about himself.
Thanks so much, Amos. It's a pleasure being on your show here today, and 30 years. It goes quickly and amazingly quickly. I've had businesses. That first business, it was so interesting earlier this year, about a month or so ago. I had the owner who now owns it called me up and he said, "Pete, you owned it for 15 years. I've owned it for 15 years. So it's an interesting thing. That was a bathroom renovation company. And we refinished bathtubs and did bathtub liners and wall systems. And we were in about 1,000 bathrooms a year when I sold it. And it continues to do well with the new owner 15 years later. We also had a cleaning franchise that we grew. We bought with 30 clients. We grew it to 300, and then we sold it. We currently have a couple of shoe stores here in Canada called Shoe Topia, of which, as you mentioned sort of in the intro, I have worked my way out of a job. For the most part, I work about a day a week in the shoe stores, and I've got a great team that's running them and looking after things so that I can have great conversations with people like you and our listeners here today, and work through all kinds of stuff with my coaching clients and do a fair bit of keynote speaking and things like that, which is truly passion for me, talking about business every day and still being involved in one that's running every day too, so that I can stay current on changes and different things that are happening and not only just talking about them.
Absolutely. Do you remember that moment though? I think we all have had it when you started a business and you first got started and you thought, what did I do? I'm never going to get there. And now all of a sudden it's 20, 30 years later and you look back and you think, wow, how did that happen?
Yeah, sure do. And, my only real job after I finished university was for my namesake. It was my dad's best friend. His name was Peter, who I was named after. And, I was working with Peter for about 6 months, and he said to me, and very entrepreneurial guy, and he said to me, "Pete," he goes, "I think you're meant to be on your own." And I said, "Yeah, I think I am too." And 30 years later, I'm virtually unemployable.
So you made that transition from being a sole operator to now working a day a week, which we say things like that, but we all know you work a lot more than a day a week, but only a day a week in the shoe store. But you've been you've been able to transition your thinking and the way you do business so that you have the ability to be able to help others, work with others. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced kind of as you realized I need to make the transition to being an actual owner, not just being an owner, operator, or operator?
I think, there are many different pieces along that journey, and I think most people have their own, but one of the ones that I often come back to is in the early days, maybe, I don't know when it was, 6, 7 years in, and everybody who starts a business, unless you have very deep pockets, you're going to be doing that work. You're going to work 50, 60, 70 hours a week because it's you and you're making the decisions and you got to build the team and all this kind of stuff. And I understand that part of business, and it's pretty normal for most people starting up. But one of the things that happened, I also had young kids at the time, and we had I couldn't afford to bring all three of the boys to Florida, like fly them down. So I was going to drive them down. We're going down to Disney and all that kind of stuff. Well, my manager at the time quit a week before we were going on vacation.
Great.
And yeah, which was, as you can imagine, pretty crappy timing. And I just remember thinking, this is the one time that I can actually go and have some time with my family, get away, and now I can't. And what I ended up doing, Amos, is I ended up hopping in the car that weekend, driving them to Florida, booking a flight back to Ottawa, which is where I lived at the time, so that I could run my business that week, flying down the following weekend to get back in the car and help my wife drive my three young kids back home. And that was their vacation. It wasn't mine. And I got thinking, I don't ever really want this to happen again.
Yep.
And, I need to make some changes. I need to get some people cross-trained. I need to get some other people that can actually make decisions without me. Even back then, it was, we're talking, say, early, probably around the 2000 or so. And we didn't have a whole lot of use of email. There was still a lot of fax being used, like all the orders were coming in. None of my guys were really doing that. I was managing a lot of that sort of stuff. And so was the manager at the time, of course, but that manager wasn't there anymore. And I didn't have anybody else cross-trained. And it made me start thinking differently about, okay, well, whomever leaves, for whatever reason, we need to have a backup in place. We need to have good process in order. We need to have good people in the system. We need to have the ability for them to make decisions while others aren't present. A lot of this sort of structure, even though at the time we were probably only about 5 people, it just made me start thinking that I need to do this in a different way, or I'll never be able to go away with the comfort that I won't have things going on without me being there.
Absolutely. Do you think, just thinking about that, when people are starting a business, they're going to create a business plan, they're going to, do all of those things. Do you think that as part of that business plan, they should have instilled in there, how do I replace myself? And not necessarily replace, but how do I get out of the trenches and get to being an owner? Should that be part of their business plan?
I really do. And it's a matter of timeline. Unless your business is, being a solo entrepreneur and you don't have plans on growing with multiple people, then, you just have to accept that. You are basically your business is a job. And that's fine for a lot of people. But if the goal is to actually have other people and grow the business and all of these things, then I really do think that it starts at the beginning. And I spend a lot of my time these days as a certified exit planner and, helping people set that stuff up is a very big piece of the puzzle, because you have to start with the end in mind. What is your end game? And what are you hoping to do here so that you can set that business up? And I'm, just on a little bit of a tangent here. The reason why you need to look at some of this stuff is because 50% of the businesses out there close or sell not when the owner wants to, it's because they have to.
Yep.
And if your business isn't exit ready, you're leaving money on the table. And having these kind of things, if you think about that one, business that I was talking about, that wasn't exit ready at the time, because anybody would look at that business would say, well, geez, I have to be the person to make every call. I can't just come in and sit at this table and the business is going to run on its own. And, if you die, if you get divorced, if you have a bad injury that puts you out of your business for 6 months, if you have a partner and your partner and you disagree on something that causes an early exit of the business for one or the other of you, and if your business isn't set and ready for those kind of things to happen, that's a problem.
Absolutely.
You're leaving, most business owners, their business is the biggest value that they have in their portfolio next to their house. Yet they don't think about this kind of stuff and how they're protecting the value. You buy insurance for your house, but you buy insurance for your car, but you're not ensuring that your business is exit ready if you have to exit before you actually want to exit.
Yeah.
It's important stuff.
I often tell clients, or even in my earlier days, a few friends that were starting businesses, and we would sit down and take a look at their business plan. And my question to them is always, what are you trying to accomplish? You want a job? Yeah. Okay. You want income? Exactly. Got it. I thought you said you wanted to do this because you didn't like working every day 9 to 5 at the same place. Like you were after, and in your words, you want freedom. And many times I think we're creating a scenario that we're creating chains to shackle ourselves rather than creating that freedom around that. So I think, everything that you have said, really, I think everybody listening, have to think, and even if you're not an owner, even if you are, you have went from being, from being one of the floor employees to being an executive manager, you got to get yourself out of the mindset that you're the only person that can do those things, I think.
For sure. And I know we were going to chat a little bit about the 5P structure that I came up with. And
yes.
We could spend an hour on it, but I'll give it to you in about a minute and a half. And really, the 5P structure is all about moving from operator owner, or moving, as you said, from frustrated to freedom, and from that side of things, it all starts with understanding what the promise is for your business. And the promise is different than the vision and the mission. The vision and the mission are inward facing. The promise is outward facing. What are you promising your clients? How are you taking them from frustrated to free? And when you fully understand that, that's what the business is built on. And so that's the promise. That's P number 1. Number 2 is the product. Number 3 is the process. And number 4 are the people. Those 3 things need to align with the promise. And if there's misalignment there, it's not going to happen for you, because number 5 is the profit. And the profit is your freedom point, where you can start buying other people's time. So if you kind of go back to that promise, it's what is your client's problem? How are you uniquely taking them through your process with your people in order to help them solve that problem? So we're aligning the products or services if you're a service-based business. And then on the people side, and I know you're a DISC certified DISC coach, and I'm certified in Kolbe, 2 great assessments. I love them both. But on the people side of things, we want to make sure that we have the right people working in our business, and we use Kolbe as a big part of that. We want to make sure that we have the right clients in place, and that we're actually aligning our promise, our products, and our people to the right clients. And we want to have the right suppliers in place. Any of the people that help us supply those products, those services to deliver that promise. Because when we have full alignment in all of these P's, we're going to have the right amount of profit. And the right amount of profit is the way for you to enjoy a bit more freedom. And when you get there, here's the interesting thing. You can decide what you would like to do. Do I want to hire another person? Because I can afford to. Do I want to free myself up some of these hours? Now I can. Or do I want to maybe take some of the profit and buy a rental unit? Or maybe I want to take some of the profit and, move to a different place, or buy a boat, or whatever it may be. The choices don't come until there's an alignment there. And that's when the profit comes. When the profit comes, now you can actually have the choices that you were hoping to have when you first started that business. Like you said, when you reel back 30 years and you're thinking about what it's like to be a business owner and why I'm getting into business for myself, is it so that I can work 50, 60, 70 hours a week, or is it so that I can enjoy some of the freedom that I want to enjoy and have that time with my family and the people that I care about?
So if you take your structure, well, first of all, that particular structure, the 3 Ps, if I'm not mistaken, I think you have come out with a soon-to-be New York Times bestseller recently that is talking about that. Where can people find out more about the 3 Ps? Or excuse me, five Ps, not 3.
Yeah, 5 Ps. It's a little book. It's on Amazon. You can buy it on Kindle or buy it on Amazon. Just a little quick read. If you're hopping on a plane for an hour or something like that, you'll be able to read through it fairly quickly. And it's called The Business Owner Breakthrough, which, as you mentioned, is the same name as my podcast. But this whole idea is outlined really around the 5 Ps and how that structure that we just briefly talked about can make a big difference for you as you start thinking about the ways to free yourself up. And whether you start looking at an exit, whether you're looking at just having a better life, all of these things, people get to that point after that initial sort of startup that we were talking about, that I find it's usually around the 3-year mark type thing, 3 to 5 years, where people start looking at this and saying, I don't think I can work 80 hours a week forever. What am I going to do to make some change? If you're ready to make some change, then this is a good structure to really start with.
Awesome. Now, just back to the 5 Ps for a second.
Yeah.
So you're suggesting that people should actually plan their business and not just, start something without thinking about it and decide that they're going to become multimillionaires within a year, so on and so forth. What, in that token, what do you think is the most important part of that on the startup side? When people are thinking about, I want to go down this road, what's the most important question you would ask?
What's your end game?
Yep. And then work backwards to try to figure out how do you get to that end game.
Exactly.
Is everybody suited, do you think, to go down this road and become an owner rather than somebody that's working 9 to 5 or, an operator? Is everybody suited?
I don't believe they are. And that's okay. It's not for everybody. Stats out there say that 7 to 10% of people are business owners in one way or form, and depending on what you classify as a real business. But it's not for everybody, and there's good reason why. If you're going to lie awake at night worrying about all the risks, all the different things, that's not healthy. That's not healthy living. Not everybody's comfortable with those kind of things. A lot of people just like their routine, just like doing what they do, are very comfortable, very happy with that. And if that's you, that's great.
Absolutely. And, the Kolbe assessment, the DISC assessment, those are some great tools. Which I guess we're both being a little self-serving there, but they are awesome tools to try to figure out who we are and what type of personality we have and what type of person we are that can help us and aid us to figure out before we go and start something. Because the reason I ask the question is I have seen so many people that have said they wanted to start a business and they kind of jumped into it, but they didn't realize or understand what they were up against. Now, one other question on that, we sometimes see folks that end up being business owners out of necessity. They never wanted to. Mm-hmm. It could be a family member that has been in a family business for years and mom and dad have passed away and they end up with it.
Yeah.
Is the process any different for them, or can they work through the same process?
Well, I do a lot of family business work. I work with a lot of next generation and transition and things like that. It's just one of the pieces that I do in my coaching practice as an exit planner. And it really doesn't matter if you're related or not. Owning a business isn't for everybody.
Yep.
And that's okay. And if it isn't for you, what we need to do, then we need to look at this business and we need to clean it up to the best that we can. We need to structure those processes. We need to ensure that we have accountabilities with the people. We need to align this so that, and that's a big part of exit planning. And you had mentioned, if somebody passes away type thing. Well, that can happen. It can happen to you too. It happened. Every one of us one day will exit our business no matter what. And in that case, if that was a person that passed away and it wasn't ready to be given down to their kids, that's a problem for the kids now. But you don't want that from your legacy. If you're the business owner, I've got 3 boys, none of which want into our shoe business, and they're all in their 20s. But I can tell you that our business is exit ready, and that if they had to take it back over, they could take it back over until sold.
Yep.
And I think that's the stuff that we're talking about here. Once you start moving from operator to owner, and it doesn't mean I don't make decisions in my business, Amos. It does. I do make decisions in my business, but most of the decisions that I'm making in the business now are very strategic and overarching as opposed to day-to-day operational. And if you're making most of the day-to-day operational ones in your business, that's a problem as far as when and if you need to move this business to another person, whether it's your kids, whether you're selling it, whether it's to a managerial buyout, which I've had and happens a lot. There's all sorts of ways to exit your business, but if it isn't exit ready, you're leaving a lot on the table.
So I had to chuckle. I had a plumbing company.
Yeah.
Really, it was, one guy owned the business, two guys worked for him.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking, and I asked him what his exit plan was. And he said, and he got in his drawer, and he pulled open his drawer, and he handed it to me. And I looked at it, and I had to start laughing because what he was handing me was his funeral arrangements. Mm-hmm. And he said, that's my exit plan. He said, and for him, he wanted a business that he could employ a couple people and make enough money to satisfy his family. And his exit plan was, when I can't work anymore, my family will sell everything. And that was that. And, although I might argue that there could be a better exit plan than that, but
I would hope
at the end of the day, there are some people, as you mentioned earlier, that just want a job that is going to be secure for them. And they're happy with that. My other career is an auctioneer. It's one of those types of businesses that there really isn't a whole lot to the business other than me as the person that goes out and calls sale.
I get that.
So when that business is ready to be folded up, but that's more, for me, it's a hobby. For many, it's a job. It's just something that they do every day, but there's nothing behind it.
I'd like if you got a second to flip back to the plumbing business.
Yeah.
Because this is real for a lot of small business owners, that sort of thought. But think of it. If you pass away and you're leaving everything to your kids, and your kids are living in different towns, they've got their own lives, they've got their own families, they've got their own jobs, they've never done any of the plumbing business, and you're basically saying, listen, you got to run these other two guys that are depending on their jobs that you've had all along, and you've got to set this whole thing up. Like, do you really want to leave that burden to your kids in that state? That's the idea of being exit ready. Like, you should have documentation. You should have different things in alignment so that if those kind of things do happen, here's who takes over, here's what happens, here's the bank accounts, here's the process in place, here's our key customers that you got to let know. Like, all of those different things. That's the kind of thing that you would want to do for your kids to help them through the journey that they're going to go through, because not only do they have to grieve your passing, they have to look after this business that they didn't want in the first place. That's really not fair either.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for anybody that's listening that is in that position, that you would want to think about that. Think about how you can do it to make it as easy as you can for who's left. And furthermore, there are other scenarios with the plumber. It may not be that he passes away. He could be injured, and there could be other reasons. And now his wife and children feel obligated to run the business to create income to pay for those expenses.
Mm-hmm. So many things to think about. So, reeling back, it's like, when do you start this sort of thought process? You start it from day one. And if you haven't, and if you've been at it for 1, 3, 5, 10 years and you haven't done this work, then you start today. That's when you start. And you don't have to have it all ready today. It takes time. And that's fine. It takes time. But if you don't start, these things creep up. We talked about the 30-year. I've been at it 30 years. It seems like yesterday. Absolutely. What's the next 30? And how quickly is it going to go? Because one day I will exit the businesses that I have. One day somebody will have to do whatever they have to do after I exit those businesses. Yes. They need to be exit ready.
So thinking about going back to really that transition from being an operator to being an owner, going from frustrated to freedom is how you said it. I love that. I think I might start using that.
Do it.
What the people that struggle the most or are struggling with that mental shift, what is the biggest piece of advice that you would give to people to get past that? Because sometimes, even though people know they need to do it, they're struggling with it because they still think, I can do it better, or I can do it the way mom or dad did it. I can
Yeah.
Whatever the reason is, they don't seem to want to give up that control. What's the piece of advice to get them over the edge, over the hump?
Well, I think the biggest piece is to align with someone that knows how to take you through it. I mean, the reality of it is that most people procrastinate things because they don't know how.
Yep.
So align with someone, talk to Amos, talk to me. Like, let's have a conversation so that we can help you through some of these things. Because if you think about the legacy as business owners, we tie in our personal lives, we tie in our personal financials, we tie in the business. There's what we call the three parts of the stool: your personal life, your personal financial, and your business. All of those three things need to work in combination so that you can use your business essentially to prop up the life that you want to live, instead of you always propping up your business. And if you're the person that's always propping up your business and not enjoying these other parts of your life with you and your family, and that's the legacy you want to live at the end of it all, then okay. But if it isn't the legacy you want to live, then think about that end game, and what is it that you want to live, and is it set up? And 30 years goes by quickly and 20 years goes by and 5 years goes. It's really interesting that the baby boomers spent their years, 50 years sometimes, from the time they're 20 till they're 70, working in one business, and at the end they've got this family business. Now the younger generation, and they're becoming business owners in spades these days, they're looking for a 7 to 10 year exit. Their end game is shorter because they want to move on. They want to do something different. They want to take that money and maybe start a different business, or maybe move their family across the country and do something there. All these different things. Things are changing. So understanding who you are, what you want out of it, what your end game is, because if you only have that 5 to 7 or 10 year ramp, you need to get this stuff in order now.
Yep. And now I think the average person is changing jobs, careers, businesses, however you want to look at that. Like you said, at least every 5 to 7 years, and maybe 7 to 10 if they're owning a business. Other thing that I had in mind is you mentioned about, the three legs of the stool: your personal finance, your personal life, and your business. And kind of relaying that back into many times we get so hung up on the business. Do you think there is importance to the individual having a mission statement and values for themselves, not only the business, but actually themselves having that?
I absolutely do. I created what I call the one-page planner many years ago now that I still use to this day. It's a free download on my site. Anybody can pick it up at simplifyingentrepreneurship.com/planner. And, it's all about what you want out of your life. And I mentioned it a little bit earlier in the fact that, do you actually want to be propping up your business for your entire life, or do you want your business to be propping up the life that you want to live? Well, one of the things is being clear about what that life is. What does it look like? How much work? How much time do you want with your family? How much time are you going to devote to health, to wealth, to all of these different things, so that you can plan those out just like you would plan out your business, and you can have the life that you want to live. And it all starts with that end game thought. As one of the exercises really is actually kind of morbid, but it's true. It's like, write what you want as your on your tombstone. I've taken it down to really, just how much you can get on your tombstone, those few words, and how are we going to align that? And now we got to go back and build this business so that we're not doing that all the time. We're going to have to do it when we have to do it. That's fine. We're business owners. But here's the thing. If you have to work 50, 60, 70 hours a week occasionally, that's fine. You're a business owner. But if you do it all the time and you never have the chance to enjoy your life and things like that, then we've got some work to do.
Absolutely. And if you want to have a lot of fun with that, and really understand where you're at as to where you would want to be, take a little bit of time and go around and ask some of the people closest to you, what would you put on my tombstone?
For sure.
And be careful with that one. You might get a few answers but even if you get answers that you don't like, it's really telling you what people think about how you operate and how you're living your life, and can help you understand where you're at.
Yeah.
Well, Pete, I have two last questions that are really my two favorite questions that I ask every guest over any of the podcasts that I've hosted over the years. And the first one is, what is your go-to business book that you always have around that has helped you through the past 30 years?
I think my go-to book is probably Gino Wickman's book called Traction. Although it's all around EOS, I don't follow it to the T because I do things my own way typically. I think it's really good business book to get started for anybody who needs some process, that needs some sort of systems and setup. And he does a really great job of explaining that whole sort of philosophy of growing your business through structure.
Awesome. And the last question is, what is a piece of technology that you use every day, or what is your most helpful technology? And I will tell you, somebody just threw this back to me the other day, and I kind of started laughing, and I said, well, my favorite technology is pen and paper. And they said, well, that's not technology. I said, at one point it was. But anyhow, what piece of technology is out there that helps you every day?
Well, I do use my iPad, and I do like pen and paper, but I use my iPad now. So I actually have my pen on my iPad, and I still handwrite because I do believe that handwriting things and notes like that burns it into your memory more than typing. So that's definitely one of them. But I think the one that I use the most really is ChatGPT. It's just such a great tool to get ideas started so that you can sort of advance them even quicker than you ever could before, and taking that tool as a starting point for further thoughts and further things that you want to do has really helped me and helped my clients along the way too.
Absolutely. Well, awesome. Thank you for spending some time with us here this morning. And I enjoyed this immensely. I got a lot of good information out of it, and maybe I think there's a few more things we have that we could unpack there. Maybe we can get you back here in the future for another episode. But thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Make it a great day.